I'm going to fold the pastoral prayer into the Lord's Prayer and ask you to say that prayer with me. It's in your bulletin, starting with, Our Creator, who is in heaven, holy is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Do not let us fall into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For you reign in the power that is love, now and always. Amen. Thank you. The music is always one of the highlights of our service. Let me start with today's reading from the book of Colossians, and I'll just read it I'm just going to read it from our official Bible. It's only 4 verses. Colossians 3:10. Now you have clothed yourselves with the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge according to the image of its Creator. In that renewal there is no longer Greek or Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all. And then I'm adding verse 14, since I chose this originally. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And then verse 23, whatever your task, put yourselves into it as done for the Lord and not for your masters, since you know that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. My name is Chris Carter. I'm a member of this church and have been for 14 years, starting on year 15. I'm not one of the founding members. I look out and see about 8 people that I think of as being included in the founding members. It's an honor to substitute for Robin Myers. This is my first topic. I have known Robin for close to 30 years. When I taught at Oklahoma City University at night as an adjunct back in the 1990s, I would occasionally see Robin in the hallways of the humanities building and have discussions with him. I already knew who he was. My wife Mary and I had participated in his father's Wednesday night Bible class at Mayflower Congregational Church in Wichita. That was back in the late 80s. So at OCU, I would also see him in action at a university luncheon group called the Faith and Scholarship Society, a conference table of faculty members, librarians, and staff. Anyone interested was welcome. Left, center, right, religious, secular, would take turns stating their position on some select topic concerning faith in the academy. It was uncanny how often Robin's views were the closest to my own, after we'd all gone all the way around the room, of the entire array of opinions in the room. Still later, I would look forward to his articles in the Oklahoma Gazette and his steady stream of important books, and today in the 2020s to his weekly sermons. So that's my connection with Robin, and that's partly why I'm here. Topic 2, stories. I want to go straight to some of the stories that we've been looking at in the Sunday afternoon book study class, which precedes these services. We're reading a new book by John Dominic Crossan, one of the founders of the West Star Institute and one of the most highly regarded historians of first century Christianity. In the prologue to his Paul the Pharisee, Crossan lists the stages that he has gone through in the study of Paul. As a young Catholic with a basically Orthodox Christian view. 2, as a Jesuit graduate student doing research in Jerusalem, where he begins to view Paul in a Jewish context. 3, as one leading tours with his friend Marcus Borg to ancient sites in Turkey, where and when he begins to see Paul more in the context of the Roman Empire. And then finally, in recent years, more and more tending to place Paul in the context of the development of civilization and of cultural evolution. So Crossan puts his subjects in wider and wider contexts and thus gains richer and richer perspectives on it. And that is the experience one has following the argument of his sometimes difficult book. Then we have the story of the apostle himself. Paul emerges as a person also moving through a series of stages. As a diasporic Jew born in Tarsus, as a Pharisee following the Torah, as a Messianic Pharisee awaiting the Messiah who will restore the nation of Israel, as a persecutor of those Messianic Christic Pharisees or non-Pharisees who believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah, as a Messianic Christic Pharisee himself. Paul converts from being a persecutor of his opponents to being one of their leaders. In an event told us the now classic conversion story about his being born again on the road to Damascus, or in a hotel room in Damascus, or where he heard a voice, or where he didn't hear a voice, or where he heard it but no one else heard it, or everyone else. There's actually 6 different versions in the Bible of that conversion. But the key is, it's a life-changing event. And the point I'm making is he goes through a series of stages like the author. Paul puts this revelation in apocalypticist terms. That is, he deals with such questions as, when does the final struggle begin? Right now or at the end of time? What role will human beings play as key active agents aiding the divine, or as mere passive onlookers? Is this a group effort or an effort by separate individuals? These theories of the end times. What will converts to this new faith do between the moment of their conversion and the completion of the final end time? In other words, how are we to live in the meantime time? These are all issues concerning the end times that Paul wrestles with. The point being that he's entering other new stages of his outlook. These issues are in flux in Paul's world. We could say that he's making it up as he goes, or that he's receiving additional insights as he carries the word further and further to new lands, or anything in between. The evidence is inconclusive. But we do have his own writings. In 1 Corinthians 13, 12 and 13, Paul writes, in perhaps the best known chapter in all his epistles, "Now we see only puzzling reflections in a mirror, or through a glass darkly, but then we shall see face to face. And there are three things that last forever: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of them all is love." In Colossians 3:10, 14 and 23, he writes of how our new nature is being constantly renewed, and that during these constant renewals, there must be love to bind together and complete the whole. This is a New English translation, slightly different than what I read, but the same thing. New selves constantly renewed. New selves constantly moving through stages of interpretation. In these passages, Paul does not sound like the kind of apocalypticist who relishes violent mass trials, mass executions, and mass deportations to the underworld. Crossan seems to believe that, on the contrary, Paul, especially in his later works, has begun to emphasize that we should use in the meantime time to transform this world into a less violent, less imperialist, less unjust society. Our goal should be nothing less than the least oppressive social organization the world has known since the pyramids rose out of the Egyptian desert. Now that's quite a claim. That's a radical claim. All I put here, that's a wild assessment. But that's how Crossan thinks Paul ends up telling the story. And we discussed in our last discussion that part of the difficulty is, I know I got a simplistic view of the Christian plan of salvation, and when I read Paul's creative, fresh take on everything, it didn't make sense. It didn't quite fit. His view is actually quite a grand, complicated, and extensive vision. We're not irrigation. This is where he's talking like, he talks like the problem is civilization. We're not irrigation systems and surplus agriculture and the wealth these produced a good thing, we would say, thinking back on the invention of these things. In many ways, yes, but they came with a price. Our early cities in Mesopotamia and Egypt came with a price. Tightly centralized authority, steep social hierarchy, powerful vested interest, and oppression by violence. And he thinks the message of the new religion is to spend our time trying to change that. Topic 3, implications. Am I saying that at the level of human communication, it's storytelling all the way down? And I've told the stories of the author and Paul, and we could tell the story of Judaism, from polytheism and henotheism, that's where you have several gods, but ours is the best, to the monotheism of Isaiah and Jeremiah, and then the exile, and then, stages of interpretation. Or we could tell the story of Christianity, early Christianity, Constantinian Christianity, the Middle Ages, and the modern period. But whatever examples we amassed, the dynamics of narrative operate at the level of groups as well as individuals. It's all stories, and they operate both at the level of persons and groups. We are always assessing, reassessing, and judging the ethics of our situation. We are asking who we are, where we came from, and where we are going. Are we going in the right direction or the wrong direction? Are we better off than we were or worse off? Is there a plan? What are our values? It's identity formation and reformation, and in the text it's that constant renewal all the way down as we move from one crisis to another. But in the flux, the binding factor is love. Topic 4 today, and I guess I better ask you to slightly brace yourself, but this group can handle it. I would be remiss if I made no mention of the fact that by this time tomorrow we will have a new president who is an old president, not just in age, but because he's been president before. His previous tenure in the White House, and in fact, the last 9 or 10 years in which he's dominated the political scene, indicate that his next administration will be divisive, untruthful, and dangerous. Maybe more dangerous the second time around. Am I saying there's no hope? Oh, we are in a national political identity crisis. Am I saying there's no hope? Well, not exactly. Our values are going to be severely tested. But what we want to keep in mind is Paul's message of faith, hope, and charity. So I won't make any predictions because I think it's going to be wild.